All right, Jessica, to start off, talk to me about how you prioritize self-care in your life and what that looks like for you.
Oh, self-care. That was always like such a topic growing up that I know people have discussed before. You just feel selfish. And it's because you're always taught growing up, you should think of others and put others before yourself. And, don't worry about yourself. Make sure everyone else is good first. But then it's like, that is such an unhealthy thing to do that you don't even realize until you reach adulthood. And there's all these coping mechanisms that you need and you don't have and you're developing. So for me, all about prioritizing, I just have to make time. Like, I always have friends who say, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I'm like, you have to make time. If it's something you want
Yes.
to do, you got to make time to do it. If you're tired, make that time to sleep and catch up on re-energizing yourself and, reflecting upon things that have happened and just taking the time to be with yourself. So I always like scheduling things out is so important to me. And it makes me seem very like type A, but I'm like, this is so I can keep balance with myself and my personal life and my work life. Like just having that balance is so important.
I love what you said on a couple of things too. And I think this is especially true with women and girls. We are not trained to think that this is okay coming up. We are the ones taking care of everybody else. And then all of a sudden you find, I think in college, you're 22 and you're tapped out and you can't figure out why. And it has all the things to do with the fact that we just weren't brought up with that. It's changing. And I think your generation is a big part of that. But I love what you said about scheduling it, because if it's important enough to go to the grocery store and put that in your schedule and get to work on time, and all of and get to your, any other class or training or, date or whatever you're doing with your friends, those things you all put in your calendar. Mm-hmm. This has got to be there too. And I was that way first. I'm like, will it be relaxing if I put it in my calendar? Yes, it's relaxing looking at my calendar, knowing that it's coming and that I have it to look forward to. So I love what you said about that. Confidently setting boundaries. What does that look like for you? What's your journey been like with that?
I think something that I've discovered is so important with boundaries is like communicating how I'm feeling in the moment, what I need from someone, or like even figuring out other people's love language, like what they might need from me. And if you don't have that to give or they don't have it to give, like talking it out, like, well, this is what I need right now. And I'm not getting it here and you're making me uncomfortable or upset or angry or anything, or even happy, positive feelings.
Yeah.
Just expressing that. I think that really is so important in making like your expectations line up with somebody else's. Mm-hmm. And just like, again, with the balance, keeping that balance with you and other people and those boundaries.
Yeah, I think the communication part is really important. I think sometimes we will set boundaries in our head and we'll be really excited about it. But A, we either forget to communicate, or B, we realize communicating it can be tricky depending on how receptive the people on the other end are. But we can't expect people just to know if we don't communicate it to them. So I love that you mentioned that. I think that's so important.
Yeah, some people are definitely a lot easier to set boundaries with than others, just because some people are really good at communicating and some people really keep to themselves. So that's definitely something to navigate also going through it.
Absolutely. And I think some people use boundaries and some people don't. Mm-hmm. And so when you're running into kind of like knowing your audience, I'm like, all right, these guys use them. This should be, we have the same language on this. These ones don't. I'm going to have to come up with a way to effectively communicate this to someone who may not understand it and be okay with the fact that they might not be okay with it. I think that's another piece too. All right. Taking care of our emotional health as much as our physical health. What does that look like? Have you seen connections with that? And then what are some practices you use to process your emotions in a healthy way?
I mean, that ties into what we were saying earlier about making the time. Like,
Mm,
if you're physically injured or physically hurting, you make that time to go to the doctor, you make the time to heal, you take the medicine that you need for pain, or,
yeah,
you do the physical therapy or like whatever you need for that physical illness. And
sure.
we need to treat our mentality like that as well. I think
Yeah,
if you need alone time or you need to be with other people, you got to figure out your medicine that you need to take or whatever it is you need
yeah,
to find among yourself.
yeah. No, I think you make a really good point. And I think that's been very historical in our culture. We make time to go to the doctor to get our physicals. But do we take,
Mhm.
do we make time to find a therapist if we need it, or just take a mental health day and just be like, I just need some space to gather myself? And that's every bit as important because trust me, and I've talked about this many times, it will show up in your body physically some way
Yeah.
or another. You'll either get sick or you'll just start having other symptoms. So, yeah. So, what are some practices that you use that are effective for you?
Um, it's for me definitely reflection with myself.
Mm,
Just, at the end of the day, going back and thinking if maybe there was like tension with someone, or I'm having a hard time fitting something in, like with myself, doing something that I want or questioning why I'm doing something, just sitting down and saying, okay, was this the best thing that could have happened? What else could we do to fix this? And just like even talking it out loud, like with yourself, and just going through different
mm,
options, but also knowing that not everything is in your power to change things.
yeah,
So I think finding the different routes of what you can change, what you can work on with yourself, because you can't change other people, they got to work on
sure,
themselves. So,
sure.
a lot of it is just kind of sorting through all the different things of what you need to fix, what you can fix, and some things that are just out of your control.
Yeah. I think that's a really important practice. I love that of just that naming and mindfulness and setting it out there because then once you name something and kind of line it out and realize what part is actually your responsibility versus what is not, it can take away a lot of that overwhelm, I think, of just owning your piece of it and being able to release those other things. So I love that. Just that I think that mindfulness and presence in naming things is so important. So I love that you mentioned that. How can we support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically?
Oh, sorry. That's always like some of the first words we learn. Sorry. Like that's
Yes.
all we're ever saying is sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry I said this. Sorry I sounded that way. You just have to live your truth and say this is who I am and this is what I want and these are the actions I'm taking. And if you
Yeah.
don't like it, that's just too bad for you. That sounds like a you problem.
Yeah, I
Of
love
course,
that.
of course that means like you can't do no wrong. Like that's obviously not the case. But I mean you just
Right.
have to you pave your own path in your own way. And especially for women, I think there's like for example, my roommate is in the history department of the school, and
Hmm.
she is like, it's just like all men there. She's like, I feel so uncomfortable, I don't want to
Mm,
talk because I'm the youngest, there's no other women in there, and I don't want to say anything. And I'm like, you just got to be yourself and speak your truth. And
yeah.
don't be sorry that you exist. Don't be sorry that you're an intelligent
Yes.
woman in this field. Like, don't be sorry about that at all. You just gotta, you do you, girl, and it'll all work out.
Yeah. I love all of that. Because first of all, we are trained as women to say sorry for the crack in the sidewalk that the person you walked by
Literally
tripped over.
everything. We should just be fixing all of it. It seems
Yes,
like I
yes, and
can't.
the pressure one, it's not true, it's not valid, and two,
Right.
but it's so much in our culture, so I love that you mentioned that and brought that up, and two, not apologizing for being in the room.
Hmm.
You have every right to be in that room. You don't need to apologize. That show up, be strong, be committed and to that and believe in yourself. And I think when we do that, we give permission for other women to do the same. When
Hmm.
they see us be emboldened, it gives permission. It kind of provides that safe, like, all right, camaraderie. Okay, we can do this. We've got this. So yeah, so true. Such good stuff. And yes, and tell your roommate we are with her.
Yep.
Go own that
All the
room.
time. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay. And that's also a great example of just her, so you supporting her in like, I'm living unapologetically and you go do that too. So good examples on both sides of that. The importance of setting and coming back to your why or your values in everything you do. How does that play out for you? And is that something that you utilize that's useful to you, or that's something you're still figuring out?
It is. I think it's definitely been a lot more prominent, like recently in my life, getting out of college, like finding a career path and like starting to create my own life, like moving out my parents' house. And now it's like all up to me. And then, lots of big decisions come up and you just have to, again, talk with yourself and think, am I living the life I want to live? Like, is this what I believe in? Am I doing something I'm proud of? And am I creating this life that I actually want to and aligns with myself and my values rather than someone else's, which it's like, I think when people start to get into like the quote unquote real world, that's when it all starts to kind of fall into place. So it takes a lot of time. Like I'm still thinking about it and working on it, but
sure.
Now it's like more than ever is important.
Well, yeah. And I think you're at that crucial age too. And you mentioned this, moving out of your parents' house. And I think dissecting between what is my value and what is their value. And some of those things are going to cross over, if depending on the household group, and that's totally fine. But am I living this thing out that's truly mine, or is this something that I'm doing because it's theirs? So, and I think you're kind of in that crucial point, which kind of leads nicely into the next part of living out of your own expectations versus others. As you're setting these values and this why, are these my expectations and what I want for my life, or is this from other people, the culture? Where does that come from? So talk about the expectations piece for you.
That definitely with expectations is so prominent in family, but now in the world we live with social media, like other people, you see like all these people my age who I went to high school with who are getting engaged, married, having children, like everyone's in a different part of their life. And that's okay. That's where they are in their life. Yeah. And it's taken me a long time to realize like, I don't need to be doing the exact same things as them. Like, we're all different people and have different dreams. And, that's maybe society's expectations of me could be somewhere else than where I am. But, with how I feel, like mentally and physically, like this is what's right for me. So I think a lot of like looking at yourself and making sure, going back to the why, that you're doing this for what you want and like this isn't what other people want for you. Like this is what you want for yourself. Right.
And I think that just comes to like being comfortable enough in your own skin to be good with that, because it's a lot of pressure. I've got daughters that are in their 20s, and my youngest was going to a lot of weddings, and she transferred and started over again in a new program. And so she's still got about a year and a half, 2 more years at school. And first it was like really weird for her to be like, oh my gosh, I've got friends. She was in like a bunch of weddings last year and just kind of stepping back. I'm like, that's their path. It's not mine. That's totally fine. It's totally good. But it's kind of a weird, but it's all part of, I think, that getting comfortable in your own skin and what matters to you and what your journey is. And so, so I think, and you guys, especially, again, you're at that age where you're hitting all those things and you're like, okay, my journey, my expectations, my values, and you're making a lot of those decisions. And I think it all starts with, you've got to really be good with you in order to make those that are really honoring to you.
Yeah. Staying true to yourself is like just the number one thing that you just have to keep coming back to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really difficult, especially when you're still figuring out who you are as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It sounds great to talk about, but then you got to put it into practice. You're like, okay. And also knowing too, that there's permission to change, and being good with that and kind of that fluidity piece. Accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. You mentioned Instagram earlier, and I think it's so important. And your generation is never known a life without social media. And so we only see the highlight reels on there, and so it can get real easy to get stuck in other people's highlight reels and like, time out. That's just one part. They're not showing you all of the other layers and parts of that. So talk about your journey with accepting all of your layers and what that looks like for you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's such a that's such a big question. I've been on like a really big journey with myself and like mental health and even therapists and doctors and everything, just talking about like you're more than just like this one piece of your life that's happening right now. Like you have this whole life to live. You have a past, things you did good, things you did bad, and there's so much more to come. Like at any age, like I mean,
Sure.
There's always that big stigma of like turning 30. It's
Right.
like 30 is so young. Like I'm thinking I'm 20.
Thank you.
Like I'm thinking I'm 23 and I still refer to myself as a kid. Like
Yeah.
I'm still a kid. They're like, you're in your 20s. I know that, but I mean there's still so much more of life that's going to happen.
Sure.
And you're not going to be this way forever. You're constantly going to be changing as life goes on, because I'm not anywhere close to the same person I was even just a year ago.
Sure.
Because you're going to have new experiences and everything. So I think accepting the new layers that are going to come and being okay with like kind of shedding and getting rid of the old layers is okay too.
Yeah.
It just, that's the way life is. Like you just kind of have to go with the flow sometimes, like, especially when COVID happened, it's like, you had everything planned out and then that didn't really happen that way, did it? So it's like, you just have to be okay with this is what's happening now. And this is this layer and there's going to be more to come and there's going to be some to let go. So I think self-acceptance is really important in that.
Yeah. And you mentioned a really important piece that you all that on our staff, I'm the only 50 something. I've got a bunch of 20 somethings surrounding me. And you all have lived out this whole COVID piece that threw a wrench in your plans and having to just be like, okay. And I loved what you said about just like letting that layer come off and releasing that and being able to move into the next thing and know that there's more layers to come. That's a really great way of thinking about it. No, that we haven't had other guests present that way before. And I love that thought process because that's so true. And especially with what you've had to walk through and, kind of what it did, disrupting college, disrupting next steps and plans and being able to like, okay, different layer, wasn't expecting this one, really no, directions on how we do this. So let's go and just being a lot within that. So thanks for bringing that up. Okay. So in living out F.E.E.L, finding empowerment, embracing layers, how has that worked for you? That's kind of a summary of all of these things. And how has it affected your relationships with yourself and others?
Yeah. Just embracing all of these things and all of these like waves that are coming at you of like, self-love and self-expression, and then having relationships with other people, but still setting boundaries and trying to make your family proud, but also living for yourself. It's all just coming at you. But I think just trying to be comfortable with yourself, like accepting all the layers, accepting all these different things that are coming at you and realizing there are some things that you just are not going to be able to change. You can't take on the whole world. You have to take on like your world kind of like,
sure.
And not worrying about other people's and feeling the empowerment through that of knowing that you're living your own best life and I'm doing what's right for me and I'm proud of it. And just like, if you don't like it, then that's just too bad. And just kind of having that attitude for the world. Cause fake it till you make it sometimes. Like, even if you're not, you just have to, tell yourself like, I can do this, until you're like, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And we talked, sometimes you got to start doing things and bringing yourself along with it. Like, all right, I'm really kind of stressed about this. I'm not super confident, but I'm going to take a step forward and we're going to do it, and kind of bringing your confidence along with you, because it's through doing that and having those successes. And even if it doesn't work out, oh, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? And then we just rewrap it. I think you bring up a really good point, that put the actions into place and move that foot forward, or else you can just stay stuck and not move at all. So I love that you brought that up, because I think that's really important. Do you feel like, from your relationship standpoint, how do the people you're in relationship with, how is it expressing that? Because you're like, listen, this is who I am. Has that been a struggle, or is that something that's come naturally? Or talk about that.
It definitely is a struggle. Like, you just, put that face on, but it can be hard when people that you love and care about just like don't understand. Or maybe they don't want to understand, but it's, it can be hard then to keep that face up, because you just want to fall back and make everybody happy.
Yeah.
And think of that attitude. And then you just have to remember, you can't make everybody happy, but
right.
It's definitely hard to keep that strength going and keep on moving when there's pushback, especially from people that you love and you want to make them happy and proud. And but sometimes it can be really easy and come naturally if they have the same mindset as you. But if not, then that's really a challenge to overcome.
Yeah, it is. And just like, I think at the end of the day, just remembering I owe it to myself to never betray myself, no matter how tough that might be. Because at the end of the day, I got to live with myself and my reasons behind doing things. And so, but yeah, I think it is a challenge. And I think it's a really fine line, especially at your age, as you're coming out and finding yourself and going out into the world. And I think a lot of 22, 23, 24-year-olds coming out of school face this, is like that line of, I want to make my family proud. I want, at the same time, I need them to be okay with who I am as me, and accepting of that, and be very clear that this is who I am, and I'm going to live my life according to my expectations. And I hope that they'll come along with me. And that's a tricky line as you're finding your voice and learning how to do that. So you've spoken to that a few times today, and I appreciate that, because I think that's something a lot of people your age go through.
For sure.
So we're down to the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Writing, number 1.
Talked about.
A little bit obvious, but that's okay. Reading, painting, watching like a comfort movie or comfort TV show or comfort video, and spending time with my family.
And 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
I want to feel confident, and I want to feel healthy, mind and body. I want to feel fulfilled and successful and proud of what I'm doing and who I am.
Awesome. All right. Well, Jessica, thank you so much. I love that we got to have this conversation today, and I appreciate, you're being authentic and just sharing your journey. Like I said, podcast audience, you can learn more about Jessica on our website at embracinglayers.com. We'll have sources that she cares about, show notes about her background. That'll be featured on our Instagram throughout the week. So thanks so much, and we appreciate you being with us. Have a great week.